All right, a rare Saturday edition of the Pat's Interference Podcast. And a rare edition because this is also an edition of the Pat's Chat Podcast. Michael Hurley taking off. Supposedly, it's vacation week if you have kids. I can't confirm this. I do know it's the NFL draft weekend, though. So this is a semi-wild time to take time off. We have the people's guest on the Pat's Interference Podcast, Kyed, also co-host of Pat's Chat. It is Saturday morning, which means we don't have a full picture of the Patriots draft yet. But you and I were at Gillette past midnight last night. We obviously covered Will Campbell's selection on Thursday night. And I got to tell you, I feel like I got a good grasp of what the grades are going to be when they get posted later tonight and tomorrow morning, Sunday, and we take a big zoom out look at the draft. Nothing is going to be lower than a B+. And I agree.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they've hit on a bunch of needs already. They seem to be drafting by the consensus rankings. There's not a whole lot to complain about. Even like the TreVeyon Henderson pick, I think was maybe the one that doesn't exactly fill the biggest need at the 38th overall spot. I don't think it was a reach for the player, but maybe a reach for the need. But they also sort of made up for that with later picks. So as a whole complete picture, this looks really good right now. And I can't imagine them doing anything in the 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th rounds that'll really screw anything up, because obviously the first 3 rounds are more important.
Yes. So here's the plan today. We are going to go pick by pick from Will Campbell to TreVeyon Henderson to Kyle Williams, who, as soon as the pick was made, I go, I think this is going to be my favorite pick in the whole draft. Lo and behold, as we're speaking now, 10:33 a.m. Eastern time Saturday, the Patriots still have 6 picks. So if this sounds like we're getting ahead of our skis, at least I am. And then, of course, Jared Wilson, the Georgia center, who you could argue could be your favorite pick. And I would listen to you about that. As well as some comments from Eliot Wolf last night. But if you had to just capture really quickly what the past, I don't know, what is it, 36, 48 hours? This is where our brains start to melt around the draft. What has this been about, the Patriots draft?
I mean, obviously it's been about improving their offense as much as possible. For the second straight year, they've spent their first 4 picks on offensive players. They dove really heavily into defense in the rest of the offseason with free agency and everything like that. And it's honestly good to see them address offense so much, because not to compare this to a past regime, but like if Bill Belichick was still head coach, if he was still in charge, and this isn't a knock against him, but like it would not have been surprising to see him filter in and scatter in some defensive players in there. Like maybe they even go defense right away. So they see their needs. They want to fill them. And Eliot Wolf even said last night that they're making these picks with their current roster in mind. And there's an argument to be made that teams shouldn't do that. And they should only draft the best available players. But clearly the Patriots roster had major needs. It needed a lot of help. And now they're trying to address all of those needs and all of that help with the draft. And it appears like they're making good picks as well.
I would say it's about something even shorter than that. It's Drake May, right? I mean, all of these picks are here to help him, a quarterback who dealt with, as we documented many times here, basically every Monday, which meant after every game last season, the worst offensive line in the league, the worst receiving core in the league. You look at Will Campbell, their first pick, Jared Wilson, as of now, their most recent pick. In an ideal world, you have these 2 hyper athletes for their positions who played in the SEC blocking for Drake May for the next 5, 6, upwards potentially of 10 years. Whether or not they get there, obviously, is up for debate. And then TreVeyon Henderson and Kyle Williams are guys who not only just play running back and receiver, but take some of the burden off of Drake May, who last year, if he wanted a 40-yard play, he need to order it, he needs to make it himself, and then somehow deliver it to himself and create everything on his own. Where if Kyle Williams, gets a clean release off the line, he's got a great release package. You saw this last year. He beat Travis Hunter for a touchdown. Or forgive me, it might have been 2023. The best corner in this class. And then you look at TreVeyon Henderson, who's not only got 4.4 speed, but averaged over 7 yards to carry last year. Yep. Like these are guys who can create instant offense in a way that the Patriots have not been able to boast about or put on the field. I mean, forget Drake May. This is going back to the end of the Tom Brady years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think obviously we'll go pick by pick on this, but it does seem like all 4 guys that they've drafted so far can be immediate contributors. I do think maybe we have to slow roll a little bit on Kyle Williams, just because we don't know what that wide receiver group will look like. We don't know who's going to be there, what all of their roles are going to be, but certainly, Will Campbell and TreVeyon Henderson look like they're going to be immediate contributors. Jared Wilson could win that center job, and we'll see what happens with Kyle Williams. But yeah, it does look like there's the potential for immediate contributors, guys who can make big plays, at least with Henderson and Williams, and then 2 potential stars across the offensive line as well.
Yeah, and I think it's good. We should pump the brakes because I'm not going to be able to see straight at the end of today. So this brain is not working functionally. Basically 3-4 hours of sleep for the second straight night. But the potential is there. And even when you look at a guy like Jalen Polk, who I gave, a B minus last year as a second round pick, and was like, does he really change my life? The athletic profile does not jump out at you. You don't see these catch and run plays. He's got a mature game, can win at all 3 levels. That's cool. But the upside there is not what I saw. So you're banking on Javon Baker, who, of course, fell to the 4th round because of character concerns. And as I always say, my favorite stat from last year had the same number of catches as the left tackle.
Yeah.
Kyle Williams is not that same dynamic of an athlete, but that potential is there. So I would say, just like any draft, of these 4 players in a really high-end outcome, you're looking at the bell curve, like that very thin positive end, 3 are starters. Okay, a little bit more towards the inside, more likely outcome. 3 are contributors, and then probably 50-50 that 2 are, and we don't know who they are yet. So this is not to say it's a guarantee. Before we do go pick by pick, we talked to Eliot Wolf last night, and there were a variety of things that he talked, about, and one of them was what we just talked about, which was, do you see these guys as potentially starting right away? Because there's an argument all of them could certainly push for that. He also revealed that there was a debate in the war room, which is not to say, oh my God, guys disagreed in the war room. It's just to say, you don't hear GMs or people in GM-like positions talk about this very much. I'll just let you explain what he said and what about that was interesting to you, if at all, because it really caught my attention.
Yeah, no, he was saying that, before they were picking at the 2nd round, there was a little bit of a disagreement about who they should take. He said that the other player that they were considering wound up coming off the board anyway. So all in all, it didn't ultimately affect things when they were actually sitting there at the 38th overall pick. But yeah, I mean, we were even debating last night, like, who could that other player have been that they were deciding between? And, it could have been Jaden Higgins, who went, I think, 4 picks ahead of them. Could have been Quinshon Judkins, who went 2 picks ahead of TreVeyon Henderson. Could have been the guard out of Arizona it was the Dolphins. Was it the Dolphins who traded up?
Yes, right.
The Dolphins leapfrogged the Patriots to take him at 37. So could have been him. Like, could have been a few of those guys who went before TreVeyon Henderson went. And I don't know. I mean, it was interesting to hear him say that. He said that it was a good conversation. They reached a conclusion, and it seems like that conclusion was TreVeyon Henderson. Eliot Wolf was on the phone right up until like a minute was left before their pick. So he was saying that, teams were calling, being interested in the pick or whatever. I will say that since it took them so long to make the pick, maybe they were kind of heavily considering some of those. Wolf did say yesterday as well, though, that there was a lot of like bad trade offers that they could just be like, no, not even like consider, which I thought was interesting. He wouldn't get into specifics on that one, but maybe those trade offers were bad. Maybe they were considering them, but they wind up with Henderson, who like very easily could have been a late 1st round pick. I think he was drafted right where he should have been. He was projected to go ahead of Judkins, his Ohio State teammate, same position, running back. So seems like the Patriots might have even gotten some value out of TreVeyon Henderson. So yeah, but that was interesting that he admitted to that or acknowledged it.
Yeah, the question, I don't say this because I was the one who asked the question, but I was genuinely curious, and we got to a point in the draft and speaking to a person who, unlike others in his position, sometimes is too honest with us. So I said, hey, what was the hardest decision you had to make tonight, whether that was a pick or trade that you made or one that you didn't? And so obviously this was a decision they didn't have to make because, as you mentioned, one of the 5 players who came off the board before them was someone that, whether it was Mike Vrabel or Ryan Cowden or Matt Groh or Cam Williams, their college scouting director, wanted, and other guys didn't, including Elliott and Alonzo Highsmith. I think my bet would be Jaden Higgins. But he was able to share that in a way that you can kind of read between the tea leaves of, okay, this is an offensive heavy draft. You need a big X receiver. Maybe it was the running back Judkins or the Arizona offensive lineman, whom now I can say I teed this up for you because I'm too much of a coward to try to pronounce his last name. Thank you for taking the bullet there.
Hey, I just called him the Arizona guard.
Yeah, it's whatever. But he also said, hey, I think it's a really good step in that right direction just for us working together. And for a guy that I think many are fairly assuming will be gone next month, as is the case often when you have this regime change with new head coaches or GMs coming in who are personalities are empowered to make all the changes they see fit, and front office members, their contracts are up in mid-May. Like, this is when the shuffling happens. Doesn't sound like a guy who plans to be leaving. It's not up to him, but that's another kind of dynamic here that gets overlooked. And I've said on the record before too, I think Eliot, whose aunt lives down the street from him, his mother's side of the family is from here, has enjoyed the New England experience, might be happy taking a back seat for a little while, could be around. And I will just say this, as much flack as he's rightfully caught, and I've been throwing that on there as well, the guy still is a good evaluator. And that's not from me. That's from current GMs, former GMs, a guy who was an assistant GM 2 times before this and has risen up the ranks and basically lived in a front office his entire adult life. I think you start to see that here with the draft and some other moves that they made, even if it was not clear whatsoever in his first year in power.
Yeah, I also think that the better this draft goes, the better chance there is that he sticks around, that they're like, hey, maybe this system's working. I have no idea. We'll see what happens when the draft is over and when, like you said, some of those contracts are up and some of those decisions are made. But, he was out there talking to the media on Friday night. He's going to be talking to the media again at the end of Saturday night. Ryan Cowden also was talking to us on Saturday. So I find that a little bit interesting. Mike Vrabel was the first guy to talk to us, but he's certainly part of who they have outward facing to the media and to fans about this draft.
Okay, you ready to talk some players?
Sure.
Well, first we're going to take a quick break. But if you're a Patriots fan, I've got a good feeling that you are feeling pretty good. Mike Vrabel is back. Drake May is going to make a year 2 leap. Oh, and there's a simple fact that as the Patriots go into a new season, it really just shouldn't get any worse, okay? We've been through 4-13, not once, now twice. Things should be on the up and up. But if you don't want to wait to watch the Patriots win in September, and October, and November, and maybe December, January, you don't have to. You can win right now with me over at PrizePicks. It's America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. You've heard me talk about PrizePicks before. It helps me spice up watching regular season Celtics and Bruins, and now the Red Sox are back, and it's so simple. Here's how it works. You build a lineup. Whomever you want, whatever stats you want, you lock it in more or less. It could be 2 players, and you could be looking at their hits, or it might be points or assists, or whatever it might be that particular night. 3-pointers as the Celtics go into the playoffs, and you look at that player, you click more, you click less, you do that for 2 players, boom, that's a whole lineup. But let's say you want to get a little frisky. You want to build out a 6-player lineup at PrizePicks, and you go more or less, and they're different statistics. You can take $5 and turn that into $1,000 because PrizePicks is still the best place to get real money sports action anywhere. And best of all, if you sign up today, you will get $50 instantly when you play your first $5. You don't even need to win to get the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed, not to mention weekly promotions like Taco Tuesday. Every Tuesday, you get up to $25 or 25% more to provide more value on your lineup. So don't wait anymore, okay? Basketball's going to the playoffs. Hockey's going to the playoffs. The Sox have a long season ahead. Spice up that season. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, we are back. Let's go in reverse order here. Jared Wilson, center out of Georgia. This is a player that when the Patriots originally had their pick at 77, right? Kyle Williams goes 69. It's their first of 2 selections in the 3rd round. You're looking, he's on my list. They move back. They go to 85. Then from 85, they go to 95, where eventually they select him. And I don't care what board you're looking at. This could be the ESPN list, where he was a 42nd overall player on their board. You could look at NFL.com's board, the consensus board over The Athletic or Arif Hassan's. This was a great value pick for a 6'3", 310-pound center who was the most athletic center in this entire draft. He was only a 1-year starter at Georgia. We talked with him a little bit last night, as much as you can glean in these 8 to 10 minute Zooms. And frankly, I think sometimes we overestimate how much we can get out of these. But he's a direct kid who's open and I think understands where he is in his football journey and the experience he had at Georgia playing against NFL defensive linemen and practicing against them year after year after year allowed him to come in and be an impact starter. I think he could push for the job this year without seeing him put on NFL pads yet. We'll see. But the best part about this to me, Doug, was that it's not just depth, which is like, hey, do you have backups that you would be fine for a couple games putting out there? This is depth with upside, and where if the starter gets hurt, we've got another potential starter behind him. That's such a difference from a, we'd be fine versus, okay, this guy's next. He's got next.
Yeah, and I think that this was also, I don't know if I think that if they had really felt like center was a major need, and if they loved Jared Wilson, I think they probably would have taken him 77th overall. But that's not to say that like they settled for Jared Wilson or that this isn't a great pick, but it kind of felt like to me, okay, this value's really here at 95. He can compete for a job. And like you said, at worst, he can be depth behind Garrett Bradbury this season. They had a future need at center. I think they could have gotten by with Ben Brown, Jake Andrews, or Cole Strange being Garrett Bradbury's backup this season. But he also has the chance to come in right away and be an upgrade over Garrett Bradbury. They'll kind of let those guys fight it off. And like you were saying about Drake May, I mean, like these are 4 players that they've taken so far who Drake May is going to be like directly dealing with. Like Jared Wilson's going to be the guy who is snapping him the ball for their sake, like for at least the next 4 years. Will Campbell is going to be the guy who's going to be protecting his blind side. TreVeyon Henderson is going to be his security blanket out of the backfield. And we'll see what Kyle Williams is, but certainly has potential to be a go-to wide receiver, a deep threat, a big play threat. So yeah, like drafting Drake May's future center here makes a lot of sense in year 2, the first year that Drake May is going to be starting this season as a starter. And yeah, fantastic athlete. Only started 1 year at Georgia, but I think you made the point last night that like, I don't know, there's a lot of talented players at Georgia. That's not necessarily the worst thing that he only started 1 year. Left after his junior season, so obviously would have started this year anyway. Fantastic athlete, 4.8, 4.40, which, I mean, Eliot Wolf made the point that like, you're probably not going to see that speed unless there's like a fumble or something like that. But I also don't love when people like kind of dismiss or poo-poo 40-yard dashes for offensive linemen, because like, what's a better test of overall athleticism than just pure speed? So like, yeah, Jared Wilson might never have to run 40 yards on a football field, but obviously it shows off that he's a great athlete. Obviously Will Campbell's 40 shows off that he's a great athlete. So yeah, overall great value for Jared Wilson. Like I said, maybe not the biggest immediate need. I think that maybe defensive tackle or edge could have been a bigger immediate need, but there weren't the same level of players available at number 95 as there were with Jared Wilson.
No, there were not. And just, again, further background. So he's 1-year starter last year. He was second team all SEC in 2023. The season before, he plays 13 games as a backup. 2 seasons ago, he's 7 games as a reserve. Georgia wins the national championship. And in 2021, he redshirted. So this is a guy who was at Georgia 4 full years, only started 1. Not a knock for an NFL factory that right now under Kirby Smart, since he was hired, and I wish I could credit whomever had this because I don't remember where I saw it, but this is a great stat. Since Kirby Smart was hired, they've had more first-round picks than losses, okay? So, like, when we say Jared Wilson's playing behind some dudes and across from some dudes, there it is. Not to mention all the defensive linemen, and including last night that he went across from. Jared Wilson, though, even Eliot said this last night, the appeal is the athletic upside. Again, 6'3", 310, ran a 4.84, and that 10-yard split is really telling and has a real strong positive correlation with success for offensive linemen. And you can see that not just in, screens, fumble recoveries, whatever, but how quickly can you get to the second level? And for a Patriots offense that is still developing its identity, you look at a guy like him, you look at a guy like Will Campbell, you can run almost anything here, zone blocking schemes in the run game. You want to pull Will Campbell on some dart schemes with a pulling tackle. Cool. Jared Wilson on some pin and pull stuff. All of that's unlocked because of that talent here. They still need to figure out what they can handle mentally, but I like this a lot. And the last point about this, because let's get to the receiver. When we talk about value, I think for the most part, it's inherently understood. You want to get good players at spots that maybe are unexpected. The best way to look at the draft is also to see it as a series of bets, right? And so when you have a good player like Wilson who goes later than expected, the likelihood that he hits, the bet pays off on a guy like him at 95 as opposed to other players is higher when he should have gone earlier. So that's the benefit of trading back. Not only do you get more bets to pay off, but in the event that if you're the Patriots and you would have taken him at 77 and you get him at 95, like you increase your odds of getting more players, not only because you have more picks, but in that 95 selection, the odds of getting a contributor are lower than they would have at 77. But because you got Jared Wilson at 95, you feel better about that because the talent is the same and the talent is real, even if it's going to take some development from Doug Marrone. So this is a really good pick.
One other quick point as well. The center for Georgia for the previous 3 seasons before Jared Wilson took over, Cedric Van Pran Granger, was a 5th-round pick last year. And the 2 guards who are playing over Jared Wilson, one Tate Rutledge, who was a 2nd-round pick this year, and one Dylan Fairchild, who was a 3rd-round pick this year. So some very good players playing it ahead of Jared Wilson, which just goes to show that that's one of the reasons why he only started 1 year, is that they, like you said, have a factory and they have constant day 2 picks playing on their offensive line.
And Garrett Bradbury, I've said this before, but just to remind folks who are like, well, why you just signed him? Why wouldn't you just start him? You don't need the depth. You've got Cole Strange or whomever. 2-year contract, $3.5 million guaranteed.
Right.
That guarantees nothing if he has a bad training camp after being let go by the Vikings, who needed all the pass protection in the world. If you watched the second half of their season last year, and he ranked bottom 10, I think, in the league among starting centers and pass blocking grade at PFF. So there you go.
Could still wind up being he could still wind up starting or not a bad backup to have as a center as well.
Yeah, this is just boosting your odds. The center won't be a problem because now you have options. As before, it was like, really hope Garrett Bradbury works out. And
one thing I will say is that someone asked Eliot Wolf yesterday if Jared Wilson could start at left guard because they have Bradbury at center and they've got a bigger need at left guard. Wolf said that they feel like center is going to be Jared Wilson's best position. So I guess I wouldn't hate the idea of Jared Wilson like starting at left guard this season, then moving over to center after a year or something. But I don't love the idea of like jerking him around and having him play different positions and not being used to playing center and not being used to snapping the ball. I would almost rather have like Layden Robinson or Cole Strange or someone else play left guard this season and sit Jared Wilson until he's ready to play center rather than force him into a different position that isn't his strength.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up because the last point in Jared Wilson is this. They see him as having that center guard flexibility. He didn't play guard a whole lot, and Elliot referenced him as, Georgia's 6th offensive lineman the year before he started. So again, he got a decent amount of action. Yeah. But not only is it just the athletic profile and the fact that he's an interior lineman, you like to cross-train guys. I don't think that's the long-term plan here. Like you drafted him to be center. Your current center is brand new on a 2-year contract. He's
also small for a guard, like 6'3", 310's small for a guard.
Yeah. Okay, Kyle Williams, 5'10", guy runs a 4.4 at Washington State, 191 pounds, actually 5'11", excuse me. Averaged over 17 yards per catch last year. This is a guy who was dynamite on deep throws without having your traditional 4.3 speed or a big frame. Great release package, good at the top of the route. Little rough kind of in between with some other route running things. What I love best about this, and I default to Mike Renner, who called him the best separator in this class, but you could see it. I didn't know where he ranked in terms of separation. But his numbers against man, and shout out Matt Harmon of Reception Perception, his win rate versus man-to-man coverage was exceptionally high for this class. Mm-hmm. You and I have watched too much football over the last 5 years to watch more receivers who cannot beat man-to-man coverage and cannot threaten defenses deep to continue covering this team and keep our sanity. Fingers crossed that Kyle Williams, whether it's just winning against man-to-man or taking the top off, can do one of those things next year and the next couple of seasons, because that, in my mind, at least, is why they took him in the 3rd round to 69 overall.
Yeah, I have high hopes for Kyle Williams. I think this is a great pick, good value there at number 69 overall. I think that just the big thing here to not get too far out of ourselves, in front of ourselves, my brain also isn't functioning, is just the amount of second, third round wide receivers that we haven't seen pan out with the Patriots. And obviously things might be different now with Mike Vrabel in charge, Ryan Cowden. Eliot Wolf has a bigger say than, he did back when Bill Belichick was in charge, but this is still a 3rd-round wide receiver who's going to be learning a Josh McDaniels offense and playing for the Patriots. And like I said, this one might be different. It very well could be, but I just like, I think that that's the fear a little bit, is that like, I still want to wait and see. I think that like he's a great deep threat, really good speed. Like you said, good separator. Seems like he's smart at finding holes in coverage as well. Good after the catch. Lots of things to like about Kyle Williams. The size and even hand size makes me a little bit nervous. I think his hands are only 8 3/4 inch. You really typically like to see a wide receiver's hands be 9 inches and bigger. And he did have some drop issues at Washington State or throughout his college career, which obviously the Patriots everyone hopes that doesn't happen, but he had 21 drops in 5 seasons. So not a ton when you average that out, but he had more drops than some other wide receivers. And I'm curious to see exactly where he plays. Probably like he mostly played outside at Washington State. And he was primarily their X wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
At 5'11", 186 or whatever he is, he'd be one of the NFL's smallest X wide receivers. So maybe better for that Z role, maybe better in the slot. We'll kind of see how that all shakes out. But just the fact that he's got the ability to play X, that he's done it before, that he's got the speed, lots to like about Kyle Williams.
There are. And again, I've watched some Kyle Williams. It's not been a ton. So I'm going to default to the guys who watch receivers.
Yeah.
All year round. And one of those is Matt Harmon, again, from Reception Perception. You see him at Yahoo Sports. And when you pull up his chart in terms of success by routes, there's a lot of green here. And some of the yellow are in breakers. They're, not great on corner routes as far as his success rate, which is still 55.6%, which is, people who don't have a frame of reference, it's red for a reason. It's below average. But where he makes his money, outs, curls, slants, comebacks, posts, and digs. Those are plays that often generate explosives if you just complete them, or sometimes with the slants, just catch it and go. And that's what he can do. And you see this with a 75th percentile success rate against man-to-man coverage, which again, the Patriots need more than anything. He's also sits down very well versus zone, according to Matt Harmon's charting. And you like that a lot. So yes, he did line up on the outside 77% of the time. He's got the frame and the skill set, again, winning off the line. And this is evident again, as if you watch only a couple of games like I did, you can see it. It's right there. I think he will be able to play inside and out. The question, as you mentioned, how much can he handle mentally? And this isn't to dismiss his IQ. It's the history of the receiver position. And to bring up once again from the owners' meetings, one of the most underrated things that Mike Vrabel has said all offseason that could change what happens this year for the Patriots is mentioning that Thomas Brown is a passing game coordinator, first in franchise history. Why is that important? What happens? He said, look, Josh has not had the benefit of guys from other systems coming to work with him. Okay, new ideas, fresh ideas, specifically how to teach receivers or other players parts of the playbook. How do you deliver this information? How do you package it so they can absorb it more easily and more quickly? And so if they're able to unlock some of that for Josh, which we know has been a blind spot, veteran receivers are the only ones that thrive here. That can unlock, of course, the players here like Kyle Williams who can win off the line against man-to-man coverage. And if he gets free deep, has legit 4.3 speed. So he's not shy when we talked to him also last night, which I love in the receiver room, though they had plenty of this last year and it was unearned. Asked to describe his game. He said, versatile, game-changing, electric. I don't know, man. I'm sold.
Yeah, no. And I mean, like great after the catch. He was second in the FBS in yards after catch per reception, which that can be a little bit, I don't know. You can't always fully trust that because like if a guy catches a 20-yard pass and catches on the fly and runs for a 80-yard touchdown, then obviously like 60 yards of that is, so it's not always like catch and go yards after catch, but he was very good at picking up yards after the catch. And that's something the Patriots, I really have struggled with, like for the past, like I'd even say like 10 years or so, is getting guys who can make plays after the catch. That has not been a strength of the Patriots program over the last few years.
No, and it's, for a lot of offenses that go from bad to good or good to great, like that's low-hanging fruit that they just reach out and get, because a lot of it's through play design. You do need the personnel with the juice to do that. But, Deebo Samuel, for example, obviously one-time great receiver, but made his money in San Francisco, not because he was the most precise route runner, it's because Kyle Shanahan got the man open. You put the ball in his hands and he does damage, and even Washington now, who trades for him, looks and goes, all right, he's old, he's banged up. Like, we're just going to get him yak plays and trust that his instincts will take care of the rest.
Yeah.
I referenced some of the winning percentages on routes for Kyle Williams. Again, corner routes, 55.6%. I didn't, without the context until recently, know what that was going to mean. Here are some percentages you don't need any context for. Kyle Williams' success rate on slants, 87% win rate.
Yeah, it's huge.
Curl routes, 88% success rate. Comebacks last year, Washington State, 100%. This is a dude who snaps off his routes, and he's in a space where he wants to be, and you are not there with him. You are behind him. And that's the thing that if he gets the timing down with Drake May, and obviously working with Stephon Diggs, I think could really, really help. We will see. This is a crowded receivers room, which might be even smaller by the time that we finish this podcast or later on today if they do trade Kayshon Boutte. This is a guy who should be useful in the league for a long time, whether or not the Patriots get all of that out of him. And we should note, fell to 69 in what was deemed a bad receiver class. We don't know, but I like this bet. I like it a lot. Anything that we missed on Kyle Williams?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's get to the pick. You and I were, I think, lower than consensus, and I rankled some folks on Twitter last night, which is not a place that you find very many folks who are too upset right after this. Can you see it? One of the best times in the sports calendar is coming up on the horizon. No, not Patriots OTAs, not minicamp, not training camp. I am talking about the NBA playoffs, baby, because, look, as the Patriots have decided to sit out on their own accord the postseason the last 2 years, I've had the great honor and joy of going to Celtics games at a sold-out TD Garden crowd for the last 4 years for the Herald. And I'm going back, even if my work won't send me, because thanks to Game Time, I can get in with the lowest price guarantee to any NBA playoff game this year. And you should too, because let's say you find even a lower price elsewhere. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference because of their lowest price guarantee. And when you go to Game Time, unlike other places, you find an all-in pricing right up front. No fees, no extra charges, no this and that. Just here's the number. If you want the tickets, boom, they're all yours. And best yet, you can see the view from your seats before you even get there. So if you want to deliberate, whether it's the Celtics or the Knicks or the Lakers or the Bulls aren't going anywhere, whomever you want to go see, you can see what it's like in your seat and compare in real time, but only with Game Time. So take all the guesswork out of buying tickets for NBA games or NHL or concerts or shows by going to Game Time and using Game Time picks. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account at Game Time and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Okay. I want to start on TreVeyon Henderson by saying this because I've written it. I've tweeted it. He's an all-around back. Yeah. He did it all at Ohio State. There's a lot to like about this player. Explosive, fast, good in blitz pickup, physical, showed improvement over his 4 years as a starter at Ohio State. I still didn't love the pick at 38 because it's a deep running back class. I think the fact the Patriots took this under a minute was telling. Had a debate about it before they even made the pick at 38 was telling. Doesn't mean it's not going to work, but this is a player who is now RB2, RB3, depending on when he gets here. And there should be a role as a pass catching back. I just worry that the Patriots offensive line is not going to be able to give him the help that he needs. And that's why I was not as high in this. When you look at guys like RJ Harvey, even Dylan Sampson is still available here as we enter day 3. Bashal Tuten, really, really good college player. I think will be productive in the NFL. My only question was value. And I think you were in the same line of thought.
Yeah, I will say that I was listening to some of what Albert Breer had to say about the pick, and obviously Albert Breer is going to love every Ohio State player in the draft, but he was comparing him to Jahmyr Gibbs. I think that kind of reframed the pick in my head a little bit more, where like the Patriots don't necessarily have like a David Montgomery. I think that ideally that would be Ramondre Stevenson, but like the Lions offense works so well with that two-headed attack of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And if TreVeyon Henderson can even be like 85%, 90% of Jahmyr Gibbs and be that guy who can spell Ramondre Stevenson while also serving as a third down component, it makes me feel a little bit better about the pick. And I think that there are similarities between Jahmyr Gibbs and TreVeyon Henderson. They're right around the same size. They're both like, I think Jahmyr Gibbs is like 5'9", 200. TreVeyon Henderson's 5'10", 200. They're both big play threats. They both have great speed. I think Gibbs is a slightly better pass catching back. Maybe Henderson's a little bit better as a pass blocker. So, there's some give and take there, but like the Lions took that type of player 12th overall and the Patriots took that type of player 38th overall. So that in itself just makes me feel better about it for the Patriots' sake. If he can be Jahmyr Gibbs light, if he can be Jahmyr Gibbs rather than, let's say, like Shane Vereen, who also was a very valuable player for the Patriots. They won a Super Bowl with Shane Vereen as their third down back, but he was a little bit more of a limited player who was drafted in the second round, who didn't do a whole lot on early downs, was really primarily almost exclusively a third down back. Same thing with James White. Once again, extremely valuable player for the Patriots, probably the best third down back in Patriots history, one of the best in NFL history, but he was a 4th round pick. You don't necessarily want to take that at the top of the second round when there are guys like Dylan Sampson and other players available later. But if TreVeyon Henderson can be that plus as an early second round pick, then I am feeling better about it. Like I said, they had other needs. They had edge, they had wide receiver, they had defensive tackle. I think they could have addressed running back later. But if they truly do believe that Henderson can be that much better than the guys who are still out there right now, then I think it is worthy of a pick.
So the counter I would have to the Jahmyr Gibbs example, which is not to say I don't understand that idea, which you could also just summarize as kind of thunder and lightning, right? The David Montgomery, Ramondre Stevenson, very loose comparison to the explosive 1B back that is Jahmyr Gibbs, that is now TreVeyon Henderson, is tell me about their offensive lines. The Lions built up and one of the best offensive lines in the leagues, a years-long process. Brad Holmes, their GM, inherited a lot of first-round offensive linemen when he took over for Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia and built upon that. And Jahmyr Gibbs was the crown jewel of this offense that you look and go, yeah, Ben Johnson was there, but the talent is the talent. And the talent was outstanding. The Patriots do not have that offensive line. This was the 32nd ranked run-blocking offensive line, worst in the entire league, according to ESPN, and bottom 5, according to PFF. Rushing success in the NFL is largely dependent on offensive line performance and defensive box count, which means we all watch the guy with the football. How far he goes determines how many yards that they get. But that's also to say the success of this podcast is about what you say and what I say, completely ignoring the fact that there's an internet connection providing this, the producer who puts it out there, all the technology, the laptops, the mics, the cameras that we are relying on to be heard and to be seen. And then once all that works, once all of that paves the way, yes, the words that I'm saying now reach a certain audience, and then that determines whether or not this podcast was popular. But I don't get off the ground. You do not get to be heard unless all of that works in the first place, which is to say, I'm not confident that the Patriots are going to be able to do that for TreVeyon Henderson. And I hope I'm wrong. That's where this is coming from. So, I think he's an excellent player, but they're not in a situation yet, in my mind, for a deep running back class to jump at 38 and take a guy, even if I agree he's an all-around back, who could be a game changer and starter down the line.
I think I don't totally understand this point because, like, at what point are they allowed to take a running back then? Because they've already taken Will Campbell as a left tackle. I think you're feeling pretty confident with the right side of their line. Left guard is still somewhat of an issue, but like, are they just not allowed to add a running back until the offensive line is fixed? Are they not allowed to run the ball until the offensive line is fixed?
Just spend less draft capital. Like I did this last night with the
that's also short-sighted though, because like you're not only looking at TreVeyon Henderson as a 1-year back, like this is for the future. So you've got to assume that they can keep improving their offensive line. Like if this was a 1-year vacuum, then like, yeah, maybe it doesn't make sense, but like you've got to assume that you're going to keep upgrading the running back position. They're not going to win a Super Bowl this year anyway. So if he can be like, you're not going to tank TreVeyon Henderson's career just because the offensive line isn't fully ready this year. Like I hate arguing for taking a running back early because like, it's not something that I typically believe in, but I don't know if you can base every single decision on how well supported that player is going to be in his first season, because you also have to have the belief that you can improve your offensive line as that player's career goes on.
Yeah, this is not to damn him forever to 3.9 yards a carry. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is, and I listed this in the tweet of, these are the players still available. Like, and you and I talked about this before the pick even came up. Donovan Ezeraku, as a slippery edge defender who could bulk up a little bit and contribute in a rotation, then take over as a starter at a premium position at a Boston college would have been my pick, was up there. You could make a case for Luther Burden, and there are character concerns, and the 2024 tape was trash. And he goes the pick later to Chicago, who sprinted to hand that pick in. Doesn't make them right, okay? And again, I think TreVeyon Henderson, and to back up the Jared Wilson point of this is a guy in the consensus boards that went way higher than 95, where the Patriots ultimately drafted him. That indicates value. I just look at this and go, okay, a guy who may or may not start right away. I like the player and the prospect. It's just not the right timing and fit. And when I look at guys who I said, Dylan Sampson available still here on day 3. You had RJ Harvey go later in the second round. Okay, there were backs at 77 and 85 and 95 that they could have taken. It's not to dismiss TreVeyon Henderson. It's not to doubt that his career will be successful in the NFL. It's just for in that moment at that pick for the Patriots, I look and go, it felt like a luxury item when you need to build out the car a little bit more before you add on the rims and pick whatever other superfluous piece of the car, even if he might ultimately be talented enough to one day drive an offense. I just don't see it here in the near future, and would have preferred it back where if I miss on a guy, it's not costing me the draft capital that is the 38th overall pick.
I agree that like I would have probably preferred to take Ezraku or one of the wide receivers, like just based on value, based on need, based on all those things. And it is, I guess it's like somewhat of a luxury pick, but like if you believe that TreVeyon Henderson can be a player, let's say like 2 to 3 times a year, who can rip off a 80-yard run and like create a crazy explosive play and help you win in that way, or even more than that, then I think that there is like significantly more value for that player than there is for someone that you don't believe has that same explosiveness. And I think that you do have to, maybe you don't have to take every pick in a vacuum, but I just specifically don't need the offensive line fully in place before you spend that high of a pick on a running back, if you do believe that running back is significantly better than the other ones who are available, and if you do think that's a good value. So I do think that he was far and away the best running back available at that spot, maybe more so than the other positions. But I mean, obviously I do still believe that they need better help at edge defender right now too, and defensive tackle.
Yeah, and look, if you want to push back, and I welcome this, like this is the point of the draft. This is the point of having a podcast. You could say, hey, Callahan, the edge class is really deep too. And your guy, recording right here, Baron Sorrell, this guy, Jack Sawyer, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of, also around here at 106, I think they're picking. I don't know. You can wait.
There are some good ones. Yeah, there are some good ones.
There are good ones. Look, I want to be clear. I think TreVeyon Henderson is a really great runner. And I want to talk after we finish this portion of the debate, argument, whatever, to talk about why he is a really good player.
Yeah.
I just think, and this is a different example, when you look at Saquon Barkley's career and him being a top 5 pick and what happened in New York and how much winning was done and how good they were on offense and the change in scenery for him, going from one of the worst run blocking lines in the league in New York to Philadelphia, and how they took off there because the infrastructure was in place, which is not to say it needs to be perfect. There is no perfect in the NFL. That tells you exactly why you don't take running backs that high. This is not a top 5 pick. It's not a first-round pick. It's not a top 35 pick. I get that. But you are the New England Patriots with a depth chart that needs help in a lot of places. I would have waited a little bit longer. They didn't. They might prove me wrong. I hope TreVeyon Henderson has a good, long, healthy career. Anything else before we pivot just to why he's a really good running back?
No, I don't think so. Yeah. And I mean, I think that he can be a really good running back. I think that, as Eliot Wolf said, he's got 3-down potential, good pass blocker, good pass catcher, might need a little bit more help route running because didn't catch a ton of passes at Ohio State, but he wasn't necessarily like the bell cow, but he had 2,000-yard seasons during his career at Ohio State. He showed that he could run between the tackles, undersized guy at 5'10", 200 pounds. But I've mentioned this before, like Josh McDaniels didn't shy away from using undersized backs on early downs. Like the Patriots in that same offense had Dion Lewis play an early down role. They had Danny Woodhead play an early down role. So yeah, TreVeyon Henderson doesn't look like Saquon Barkley. He doesn't look like Ramondre Stevenson or Antoine Smith or Ben Jarvis Green Ellis, but like they've had those guys play early down roles in that kind of hybrid bell cow / pass catcher role. And that's ultimately how I view Henderson. I view him less like a Vereen and James White.
Yeah, I don't see him in that vein at all. I think that might be his role initially, again, given the pass catching skills, and we'll see the trust they put him in blitz pickup. Like, he's capable there. You start small. I could also see a path where, 4 years ago, we're watching Ramondre Stevenson go from rookie who fumbled in the opener, don't see him for 4 weeks, and then middle of the 2021 season as a rookie, break out, and you watch him touch the football and run with it, and you're like, oh, he's the best runner on this team, and it might not be close. Like, TreVeyon Henderson does have that type of raw talent. The number one running back coming out of high school in 2021, okay? 5-star recruit. Immediately a freshman All-American who had almost 1,300 yards at Ohio State, which, again, within the context, great offensive line. They're overpowering teams. 10 out of 12 games, they just line up on the field. That's what Ohio State does. He gets banged up the next 2 seasons. One of those was a rib injury. He called a cheap shot. And so that's when he was more of the bell cow back. What I really like about him, and what you need at that 38th overall pick, in addition to an impact player this is not a premium position, but it is what it is now. He was a team captain. He was open to splitting the backfield, which he'll have to do in New England and under Josh McDaniels, who has never given the most percentage of third down snaps to the guy who also has the highest share of early down snaps. There are pretty much running back by committee. And he also turned it around character-wise. And you heard this, which is not to say people who cite God and faith and thank Jesus are all the same, but he has spoken about how his faith kind of turned around his attitude and his outlook. And I think for a team that is employing him now, that's a huge positive, because you saw it in getting voted a team captain. You saw it in how he was a little bit more physical, I think, last year, running between the tackles. That's a guy who's willing to do hard things, willing to sacrifice for his teammates, and it paid off in the biggest possible way when they won a national championship. I think he's a really good player. Just wasn't the right timing for me. Doesn't mean I'm right. That's all.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with the pick. I wasn't the most excited about, but the way that the rest of the draft shook out for them, at least on day 2, made me feel better about it, I would say.
Yeah. Okay, Will Campbell. We spent 3 months talking about this guy, and I don't want to talk about his arm length any more than I have to at all. The Patriots have made clear they see him as an exception to the rule, which is the arm length, his wingspan, which would be the shortest in the last 10 plus years of any tackle in the NFL if he does stick and start at left tackle. The case for Will Campbell is that exceptions in the NFL, which exist on a height basis, weight basis, length basis, are all exceptional athletes and exceptional competitors to begin with. Okay, Drew Brees had a Hall of Fame release, decision-making, and accuracy, which allowed him to compensate for being a 6-foot-tall, barely quarterback. Will Campbell is an elite athlete. Yes. Everything we've heard indicates he's an elite competitor and leader. So his chances of becoming this exception, even if he is going to be a one-on-one, are higher than normal. I still need to see it. Again, does not mean that I'm right. But look, he does not sound like a 21-year-old when we heard him talk on Friday. And everything that they're going to do to give him a chance and work around his skill set has me believing a little bit more. But it's interesting because I don't – do you see him as like the foundation upon which they built the rest of this draft class? Or do you see, even if they kick him inside to guard and the day 2 guys hit, this is still a really good class, if obviously?
Yeah, I mean, like if TreVeyon Henderson winds up being a pseudo starter, if Kyle Williams is a starting wide receiver, if Jared Wilson is their center of the future, and if Will Campbell has to play guard, then I think this is still a pretty decent draft class. So that helps. But if Will Campbell has to be a guard and those next 3 picks don't hit, then yeah, it's maybe not an outright disaster, but it certainly looks a lot worse than the way that we're talking about it right now. It does feel like they're going to give him a very long leash to play tackle, though. I don't think that they're going to be moving him inside to guard at the first sign of trouble this offseason. I think that they are going to fully see what he can do at left tackle, maybe even into the season before they even consider moving him to guard, because that's what he needs to be in this offense. You cannot go back to Vidarian Lowe or DeMontre Jacobs or Caden Wallace until all of your options are out on Will Campbell. So no, I would say on Will Campbell is that, like, maybe he winds up being a Pro Bowler. Maybe he winds up being an All-Pro. The outlier on his length and wingspan makes that more unlikely. But if you take Will Campbell at number 4 overall, and if he can be Nate Solder as like a top 10 to 15 left tackle for the next 6, 7, 8 years, whatever it is, then in this draft class, he's still worth the 4th overall pick.
Smashing success. Smashing success.
Even like Colton Miller never made a Pro Bowl. If he winds up being Colton Miller, you're feeling very good about this pick.
I'll give you one more name, and a guy who's made 2 Pro Bowls. And we've talked about this before, so I built this up like there's a surprise for you, but there's not. Brian O'Neill.
Right.
Guy whose wingspan coming out of Pitt, he was a 2nd-round pick, another seasoned starter, and Pitt's not LSU. I get that. But whose wingspan is barely an inch longer than Will Campbell. Like, this is a narrow frame guy with good footwork, a lot of experience, and was not the athlete that Will Campbell is. And he has started for 7 seasons now in Minnesota, more than 100 games, and made 2 Pro Bowls, and has been a leadership pillar in that locker room for what's been mostly a competent franchise since he's been there, which is not to credit them going, all the places they've been or haven't been to Brian O'Neill. The point is, he succeeded with a very, very similar wingspan. And even if Will Campbell technically will be the first offensive tackle with a wingspan under 78 inches to stay at the position and not have to kick inside to center or guard, of which you've seen a lot of day 1, day 2 picks have to do, or maybe not many day 1 picks, but a lot of day 2 picks have to do. You look at Brian O'Neill, he plays right tackle. Will Campbell could be the opposite side. You get 2 Pro Bowls out of this guy? Yes, more than worth it.
I agree with you outside of the not as good of an athlete, because Brian O'Neill is actually like an insane athlete. He ran a 4.82 with a 7.14 3-cone. His 3-cone would have been like pretty decent for a wide receiver, and he weighed 300 pounds. So other than that, I agree with you. But yes, both very good athletes, and that's how you can survive with a smaller wingspan in the NFL as an offensive tackle.
Now I need Will Campbell and Brian O'Neill to do like a sit-up contest, because my only recourse is his core strength. And watching Will Campbell recover on some of his losses, which, look, losses are bad, but it's just insane because you were like, this is flexibility and a core strength that should not be available to all offensive linemen.
I will also say that Campbell ran almost as well with 20 pounds heavier. So obviously that makes that plays a factor as well. Brian O'Neill, 34 1/8 inch arms, but also a very small wingspan. Like, that's rare. He's got like an even smaller shoulder frame than Will Campbell for him then.
Yeah. He's like walking down the aisle of an airplane, arms like outstretched, carrying 2 bags, and he's not hitting anyone in the aisle. Like anyone sitting down with that wingspan and that broadness of his shoulders. Yeah. Okay. So he's an insane athlete, but it backs up the point, right? Like, exceptions in the NFL to these prototypical rules are exceptional athletes already and exceptional competitors. And I think the Patriots have that in Will Campbell. We'll see. It is interesting to me when we talk to him Thursday night and then Friday, and we got to go soon, that he mentioned the Patriots wanted to try something new. It sounded like some technique in that workout that is now famous for him putting Mike Vrabel on his ass. And that to me says they have a plan for, hey, all that inside pressure you would give up when you would, kind of overset to the outside, understanding that your length was not an asset and you're trying to get there first. All right, we got a counter for you. And it sounds like they really liked his adaptability and how quickly he picked that up, which is something Vrabel's gone on and on about since then. So I'm curious to see what those answers are.
Definitely. Yeah. That was interesting that he was saying that they were teaching him some things during that workout. But sounds like, just as much as everything else, they were really impressed with his character and what kind of vibe he's going to bring to the building. So that seems like a pretty big part of them being comfortable with him at the 4th overall pick.
Huge. Like, you can feel the maturity for a 21-year-old. And look, this is something we all do. I think a lot of beat writers do. We're going to write stories about the draft picks now. We're going to get to know them, talk to their teachers, people close to them, sometimes the family members, the high school coach who always gets the phone call. And then you write positive stories about this. Will Campbell, I never would have guessed, closing my eyes and listening to him as a 21-year-old. Never. Right. Yeah, certainly not a 2-time captain at 19 and 21 or 20 years old, because he just turned 21 in January. Okay. Yeah. Like, this is a rare person in terms of this arena and his accomplishments at that age. All right, two things. Number one is a question for you. Number two is a reminder to tune in on our live stream Monday.
Yes.
But before then, anything else that we missed on any of the draft picks? I don't feel like it's worth our time to go into day three guys they might pick or like, but just anything that we didn't cover from the past 48 hours.
No, I don't think so. Not as far as a Patriots perspective goes. Obviously very interesting draft overall with Schroeder Sanders now falling into the 4th round, but that has nothing to really do with the Patriots. Just pretty fascinating to see that fall there.
Except for the split second heart attack you and I had. I think it was at 69. We thought they might take him, or 95.
95, I think it was.
Yeah, it was right after Dylan Gabriel went. There's a lot of, oh my God. We're like, no. Who saw the pick? Who tipped the pick? This can't be happening. Which is only to say that for two guys working on a deadline, we don't like a big mess when we're up against it. This is not to knock Shedeur. It's just to say, not the time or the place for us in a very, very selfish way. All right, Monday night, we have another live stream. This is going to be awesome. Huge show. The last one was pre-agency with Fitzy. Ton of great guests. This is going to be post-draft. You know more about this than I do, so tell the people what they need to know.
Yeah, we got Danny Kelly and Danny Heifetz. We got Steve Palazzolo and Sam Monson. We got Mina Kimes coming on. We got Tayler Kyles. We got Phil Perry. We got Mike Giardi. We got Michael Hurley. We have Andrew. Did I miss anyone else?
What time is it? I think you got the rundown.
7:30 on Monday. And Jason McCourty, just a former Patriots player, former NFL player, now on ESPN. So he'll be joining as well. So yeah, it's gonna be 7:30 to 10. You and I will be hosting it. We'll be bringing on guests in 15-minute increments. You can watch it on the Pats Jet channel. You can watch it on CLNS channel. You can watch it on Andrew's channel. You can watch it on Twitter. There's going to be many places to watch it. We're doing it as a fundraiser for my Leukemia Lymphoma Society campaign. So you'll be able to send in super chat questions, get those questions answered. Then we're going to have some raffle items as well. If you submit super chats, you can just donate straight to one of the LLS sites. So it should be a lot of fun. Really looking forward to it. Really sneaking up on us here, and it's going to be a good time.
It's going to be awesome. I can't wait to ask my own questions to folks like Mina and Sam and Cousin Steve and the Dannies, who just might hang out for the whole show because we can't kick them out, which would be more than fine. But look, if you want your draft questions answered or anything about the Patriots from those folks, it's a small donation to the best possible cause in cancer research. And people who listen to my show and obviously yours are familiar with this. Come hang out Monday, 7:30. I'm sure we will go until 9:30, 10 at the very latest. Show up on YouTube, look for our socials, come hang out, donate $5. Just hang out. Get whatever question you want answered from any person that Doug just listed. It's going to be an awesome time. And yeah, those raffle items, one of which we got from someone close to the Patriots just a couple of days ago. Yeah, and absolutely. I'll just say there are a lot of signatures involved on that one. So I'm excited. All right, we have to go. Day 3 of the draft is 34 minutes away, and we got to get ready. So thank you. We will be back Monday. That will be posted to my feed, to Doug's feed, as well as being a live show. After that, TBD for Pat's Interference. I think we will be taking a little bit of a break, but we will have more male fans on to do the same thing. $5, $10 to LLS. You come on the show, talk about whatever you want. Sound good?
Absolutely, yeah. We will talk to you guys later, and we'll probably continue doing Pat's Chat because what the hell else are me and Hurley gonna do? So yeah, keep listening to that once a week.
Yeah, until Hurley goes back to Florida for the schedule release, the last big event we have on the calendar.
I know, right?
See you, pal.
All right, bye.